the ground. So, the White House will say, well, the president didn't go because he didn't want to pull necessary security resources away from the people who needed help. Nonsense. You go down there immediately to show solidarity with the people who are suffering so badly in Mississippi and Louisiana.
Yeah, a couple of things. This was not a named event. This wasn't a Katrina or a Sandy. But, many scientists have said and forecasters have said this is the worst thing we've seen since a Sandy. So one thing we know is that when you have a rain event like that, it can go on for days and days and days. And it can be sometimes the equivalent to one of those types of storms.
Yes,
and so it didn't get that build-up in media coverage because it was raining. Right?
And because the president was in Martha's Vineyard.
Well, and golfing. And I don't believe, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I don't believe that he wouldn't have known that he was being videotaped golfing, right? Because you have to get clearance to get onto the golf course. Like, you can't just pop up with your smartphone.
There's a sensitivity level here that's completely missing. I mean, if this were a Republican president right now, the media would be going absolutely, crazy. And there's been articles written about this. Joe Concha of The Hill wrote an article about the absolute media bias and double standard. I also want to stay on the point of Hillary Clinton and President Obama saying, I don't want to turn this into a media circus. I've been with my father many times. Never underestimate the power of a politician going into a situation when people are in crisis, feeling like they need support and help and that they are heard and that they're not alone. And to sort of belittle that, I think, is actually borderline cruel.
So, Julie, I have to ask you what you think might be going on behind the scenes. You've seen, this is not a campaign, but he's helping somebody with the campaign. So he's kind of an extension of the Hillary Clinton campaign today.
Yeah, look, what he should have done is gotten off the golf course, gone on national television and said, these people are hurting, here's how you can help, here's how you can volunteer, here's how you can donate. He should have absolutely done that. There's no excuse not to have cut your vacation short by a few minutes to do that. He could have done that from the vineyard. I will say the governor of Louisiana said that his coming down there would be counterproductive.
At first he said
because resources would have had to go. When the president travels, he doesn't travel alone.
He could have sat down in a neighboring town, though, or he could have flown over. There were a lot of options.
He could have done that. But I think the most important thing would have been to speak to the American people and explain to them how they could help, how he was intending to help.
Why do you think it didn't happen?
I don't know, and I think it was a huge missed opportunity, and it was a screw-up, and if I were advising him, I would have told him to do that. I think that's the least the president
Well, and he's not running. Remember, on the eve of the 2012 elections, right after Sandy here in New York, and even a Republican governor, Chris Christie, welcomed the president because he knew that the president would draw attention to the crisis that was happening in New Jersey.
But that was after the story, was when the cleanup was going on.
But remember, the whole point is people say, well, it would be a political circus and everything.
Yeah.
It may be, but even a Republican governor was happy to see a Democratic president come to his state right before an election because he knew it would draw attention and help to the people in his state.
Last word, Elizabeth, on this?
Well, listen, I just want the people to get help. That's period. And I don't want it to be frittered away at the state or local level with politicians using it again for their own, aggrandizement.
I know you like to trace some money on this.
Yeah, money flows, that's right.
All right. Donald Trump doubling down on comments he's made before in reaching out to black and Hispanic voters. Trump asking a crowd in Akron, Ohio, quote, "What do you have to lose?" Telling them if he's elected, he'll make sure everyone is safe, and using some tough language on urban crime. Watch.
You can go to war zones in countries that we're fighting, and it's safer than living in some of our inner cities. They're run by the Democrats. What do you have to lose? You'll be able to walk down the street without getting shot. Right now, you walk down the street, you get shot.
Hillary Clinton's campaign responding in a statement saying, quote, "It could not be clearer how much African Americans have to lose under Donald Trump. He is doubling down on insults, fear, and stereotypes that set our community back and further divide our country. But again, this is not surprising. This is a man who questions the citizenship of the first African American president, has a disturbing pattern of